Our adventurers crept stealthily round to these willows, and making Neptune lie down in a little distance, succeeded in climbing unobserved into a large and thick tree, where they could look immediately down upon all that was going on. The beavers were repairing a portion of their dam, and every step of their progress was distinctly seen. One by one, the architects were perceived to approach the edge of the swamp, each with a small branch in his mouth. With this, he proceeded to the dam and placed it carefully and longitudinally on the part of which had given way. Having done this, he dived immediately and in a few seconds reappeared above the surface with a quantity of stiff mud, which he first squeezed so as to drain it of its moisture in a great degree, and then applied with his feet and tail, using the latter as a trowel, to the branch which had just lain off upon the breach. He then made off among the trees and was quickly succeeded by another of the community who went through precisely with the same operation. In this way, the damage sustained by the dam was in a fair way of being soon repaired. Messrs. Rodman and Thornton observed the progress of the work for more than 2 hours and bear testimony to the exquisite skill of the artisans. But as soon as a beaver left the edge of the swamp in search of a branch, he was lost in sight among the willows, much to the chagrin of the observers who were anxious to watch his farther operations. By clambering a little higher up the tree, however, they discovered everything. A smaller sycamore had been felled, apparently, and was now nearly denuded of all its fine branches. A few beavers still nibbling off, some that remained, and proceeding with them to the dam. In the meantime, a great number of animals surrounded a much older and larger tree, which they were busily occupied in cutting down. There were as many as 50 or 60 of those creatures around the trunk, of which number 6 or 7 would work at once, leaving off one by one, and became very weary, a fresh one stepping into the vacated place. When our travelers first observed the sycamore, it had been already been cut through to a great extent, but only on the side which nearest to the swamp, upon the edge of which it grew. The incision was nearly a foot wide and as cleanly made as if done with an axe, and the ground at the bottom of the tree was covered with fine longitudinal slips, like straws which had been nibbled out, and not only eaten, as it appears that these animals had only used the bark for food. When at work, some sat down upon the hind legs in a posture so common with squirrels, and gnawed at the wood, their forefeet resting upon the edge of the cut, and their heads thrust far into the aperture. 2 of them, however, were entirely within the incision, lying at length and working with great eagerness for a short time, when they were relieved by their companions. Although the position of the voyagers was anything but comfortable, so great was their curiosity to witness the felling of the sycamore that they resolutely maintained their post until sunset, an interval of 8 hours from the time of ascending. Their chief embarrassment was on Neptune's account, who could with difficulty be kept from plunging into the swamp after the plasterers who were repairing the dam. The noise he made had several times disturbed the nibblers of the tree, who would every now and then start, as if all actuated by one mind, and listened attentively for many minutes. As evening approached, however, the dog gave over his freaks and lay quiet while the beavers went on uninterruptedly with their labor. Just as the sun began to set, a sudden commotion was observed among the woodcutters, who all started from the tree and flew around to the side which was untouched. An instant afterwards, it was seen to settle down gradually on the gnawed side till the lips of the incision met. But still it did not fall, being sustained partially by the unsundered bark. This was now attacked with a zeal by as many nibblers as could find room to work at it, and quickly severed, when the huge tree, to which the proper inclination had already been so ingeniously given, fell with a tremendous crash, and spread a great portion of its topmost branches over the surface of the swamp. This matter accomplished, the whole community seemed to think a holiday was deserved, and ceasing their work at once began to chase about each other in the water, diving and slapping the surface with their tails. The account here given of the method employed by the beaver in its woodcutting operations is more circumstantial than any we have yet seen, and seems to be conclusive in regard to the question of the design on the animal's part. The intention of making the tree fall towards the water appears to be obvious. Captain Bonneville, it will be remembered, discredits the alleged sagacity of the animal in this respect, and thinks it has no farther aim than to get the tree down, without any subtle calculation in respect to its mode of descent. This attribute, he thinks, has been ascribed to it from the circumstance that trees in general, which grow near the margin of water, either lean bodily toward the stream or stretch their most ponderous limbs in that direction, in search of light, space, and air, which are there usually found. The beaver, he says, attacks, of course, those trees which are nearest at hand and on the banks of the stream or pond, and these, when cut through, naturally preponderate towards the water. The suggestion is well timed, but by no means conclusive against the design of the beaver, whose sagacity, at best, is far beneath that of which is positively ascertained in respect to many classes of inferior animals, infinitely below that of the lion ant, of the bee, and of the calipari. The probability is that there were two trees offered to the choice of the beaver, one of which preponderated to the water, and the other did not. He would, in felling the first, omit as unnecessary the precautions just described, but observe them in felling the second. In a subsequent portion of the journal, other particulars are given respecting the habits of the singular animal in question, and of the mode of trapping it employed by the party. We give them here for the sake of continuity. The principal food of the beavers is bark, and of this they put by regularly a large store for winter provision, selecting a proper kind with care and deliberation. The whole tribe, consisting of sometimes of 200 or 300, will set out together upon a foraging expedition and pass through the groves of the trees, all apparently similar, until a particular one suits their fancy. This they cut down, and breaking off its most tender branches, divide them in short slips of equal length, and divest these slips of their bark, which they carry to the nearest stream leading to their village. Thence floating at home. Occasionally, the slips are stored away for winter weather without being stripped of the bark, and in this event they are careful to remove it, to refuse wood from their dwellings as soon as they have eaten the rind, taking the sticks to some distance. During the spring of the year, the males are never found with the tribe at home, but always by themselves, either singly or in parties of 2 or 3, when they appear to lose their usual habits of sagacity and fall an easy prey to the arts of the trapper. In summer, they return home and, busying themselves with the females and making provision for winter. They are described as exceedingly ferocious animals when irritated. Now and then they may be caught upon shore, and especially with males in spring, who are then fond of roving to some distance from the water in search of food. When thus caught, they are easily killed with a blow from the stick, but the most certain and efficacious mode of taking them is by means of the trap. This is simply constructed to catch the foot of the animal. The trapper places it usually in some position near the shore and just below the surface of the water, fastening it by a small chain to the pole stuck in the mud. In the mouth of the machine is placed one end of a small branch, the other rising above the surface and well soaked in liquid bait, whose odor is found to be attractive to the beaver. As soon as the animal scents it, he rubs his nose against a twig, and, in doing so, steps upon the trap, springs it, and is caught. The trap is made very light, for the convenience of the portage, and the prey would easily swim off with it, but for its being fastened to the pole by a chain. No other species of fastening could resist his teeth. The experienced trapper readily detects the presence of beaver in any pond or stream, discovering them by 1,000 appearances which would afford no indication to the unpracticed observer. Many of the ideal wood cutters, whom the 2 voyagers watched so narrowly from the treetop, fell afterwards a victim to trap, and their fine furs became a prey to the spoilers, who made sad havoc in the lodge at the camp, at the swamp. Other waters in the neighborhood also afforded the travelers much sport, and they long remembered the island at the creek's mouth, by the name of Beaver Island in consequence. They left this little paradise in high spirits on the 27th of the month, and pursuing their hitherto somewhat uneventful voyage up the river, arrived by the 1st of September without any incident of note, at the mouth of a large river on the south, to which they gave the name of Current River, from some berries abounding its margin, by which was, beyond doubt, the Quickery. The principal objects of which the journal takes notice of this interval, and the numerous herds of buffalo which darken the prairies in every direction, and the remains of a fortification on the south shore of the river, nearly opposite the upper extremity of what has been called Bonhomme Island. Of these remains, a minute description is given, which tallies in every important particular with that of Captains Lewis and Clark. The travelers had passed the Little Sioux, Floyd's, the Great Sioux, Whitestone, and Jock Rivers on the north, with Wawandi Shenty Creek and White Paint River on the south. But in neither of these streams did they stop to trap for any long period. They had also passed the great village of the Omahas, of which the journal takes no notice whatever. This village, at the time, consisted of full 300 houses and was inhabited by a numerous and powerful tribe, but it's not immediately upon the banks of the Missouri, and the boats probably went by it during the night, for the party had begun to adopt this mode of progress through fear of the Sioux. We resume the narrative of Mr. Rodman with the 2nd of September.